Welcome to Sonographers in the Cities, where we connect through sound with your host, Lynn and Geselle. Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Sonographers in the Cities. I'm Lynn.
And I'm Geselle.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. And if you have been tuning to the other episodes, thank you so much for just supporting our baby podcast.
Yes, welcome back to another episode. We appreciate you guys sticking around, listening. Lynn and I have so much fun doing this. So thank you. We're doing some more episodes, more targeted towards your guys' questions and things that you guys can find more specifically. So if you have anything more specifically you'd want us to talk about, let us know in the comments of our YouTube videos or even in our Instagram and Facebook, and we can get you an episode just for you.
Yes.
Today's episode is going to be about
Job interviews specifically, because our last episode is for DMS program interviews.
Mm-hmm. So if you're a sonographer or a sonography student that's going to prepare for graduation, or every student's going to need this for future job interview in general, this is the episode for you. And we're going to give you guys some tips, advice, how to prep, things like that. So yeah, if you are still a student, this is still going to be helpful for you. So take notes. And if you're a sonographer, this will help you, maybe get that new job that you've always wanted.
Yeah, so it's an exciting time, a nerve-wracking time. Like, interviews are also always nerve-wracking. So we hope that this episode will be a little bit of help to ease that nerve for you.
Yes. And I actually just went through an interview recently. So I have a little knowledge in my brain from what happened in that interview. So I can share some of that. And
yes, please.
Yeah. And Google obviously has a lot of things, but it's nice to get some experience from Lynn and I, who have both experienced many interviews throughout our lifetime in general.
So, yes, I was like, I haven't really interviewed for sonography yet.
Other jobs.
Yes, I have.
Yes, it's all pretty much the same. Now you have to shine in the world of ultrasound because one, I think it'll be a little bit easier now for people because obviously a lot of people are hiring. So to get the job interview in general, it's going to be a little bit easier. We are very short-staffed all over the world, and people are looking. So when you get an interview, that's a good stepping stool already into that place of work. And hopefully you really need a job just as much as they really need you.
Yes. All right, Geselle, tell us what's really fresh in your brain since you recently had your interview. And it was successful because you got the job.
Yes, you guys, surprise. I got another job, so I'm going to be per diem at another hospital. Essentially, I've been doing this for about 6 years now. And obviously, when you get more experience, it'll be easier to get through these types of interviews. I mean, interviews in general are nerve-wracking, and I still was obviously nervous. But you feel more confident later on down the road. Now, Lynn's going to have an interview herself, and I'm sure she's nervous. That's normal. So if you guys are feeling nerves, obviously any interview, that's normal. But go in there, I'd say being confident in yourself, knowing that you want this job. There's, a lot of people out there who would like to have that spot, and you're in that spot getting an interview. So you're one step closer to being able to make the money and get a job somewhere, because I'm sure you're applying to places that you want to get experience from. So, just like in our last episode, we talked about interviews for schools and doing your research. You have to do a little bit of research with this as well. Know a little bit about the company, right? In ultrasound, it's a small town, small world. So, I did mention a few things about this place that I interviewed at, and that, you always obviously want to say good things. You want to present yourself well, and you want to make sure that you are able to answer the questions that they have for you. You never know what they're going to ask. But for me, like we always talk about interviews, tell me a little about yourself. So they want to know why you're applying. Why are you trying to work there in the first place? Do you know anything about that facility? Is it an outpatient facility, hospital? Is it a doctor's office? Is it a contractor? Are you planning on traveling? You want to tell them why you're applying, and you have to show them what you have to offer. So I had to explain what I was looking for because it's a mutual thing. You should
Mhm.
want to work there and give them your time because you're going to work for them, and they should want to be able to work with you. It's a
Mhm.
give and take, I think. Um, and so they just asked me that. They wanted to know the types of exams that I scanned, my credentials. Obviously, if you're a new grad sonographer, you have to let them know what you're planning on getting if you don't have it yet, or what you already got. Um, you have to know for sure if they are requiring anything from you, like vascular registry, echo registry, um, all the other registries, because it just depends on where you're at. If you're in an OBGYN
Mhm.
office, they are most likely going to want you to have an OBGYN registry. And you will stand out and impress them if you have your registries already. But don't be shy if you don't have it and say you're looking to get that registry as well. But because I have a little bit more experience, it was a bit different because they would ask me what machines I've worked on,
Mhm.
um, what kind of exams I've done. They asked me what's the hardest exam I've ever done, or what's a unique exam that you did before. And they also asked me subtle anatomy questions because they want to know if I know how to scan or if I can figure things out. So this interview I went in actually did not have a scan interview.
Mhm.
Some places you guys will go to will ask you to scan. So if they do require you to scan, like my hospital that I'm in right now, we require them to scan. We actually interview you while you're scanning someone. So some places will interview you, just interview you, and then have you scan. We interview you while you're scanning. And it's pretty cool to see someone talk while they're scanning because you want to,
That's very scary. Like,
yeah, yeah.
as a if I was applying to your place as a new grad, I'll be, like,
You'd be
shaking.
like, but doesn't that show, like, how you are with a patient or how
Mhm.
you are interacting? Do you get sidetracked? Things like that. It's a little bit more of a skill set type thing, more
Yeah.
testing, I think,
Mhm.
versus many places don't do that. They have you, one other place that I worked at, it was an outpatient. They interviewed me first and then had me go scan a patient. Well, not a patient, but like quote unquote a patient. So it was one of the workers, and I scanned their
Mhm.
bladder and their kidneys. Um, some places will make you do a protocol, just however you do the protocol, and some places will ask you to find things. It's all different, but just be prepared for that kind of thing. And then situational questions.
Mhm.
So they'll ask you, what would you do if a nurse told you do this exam, even though the patient refused? Very much so situational. They want to see how you think. Um, and that would be a little bit harder for someone, let's say, who's a new grad or who has never had a job before, because
Mhm.
you're trying to think, okay, what would I do in that situation? If you had experience, it's a little bit easier to answer that question. But what goes first, the nurse or the patient?
Patient, always.
Patient always. So patient care always first, high quality care. If you go into these interviews knowing that you are being the best sonographer that you can be and taking good care of your patients, that's, I think, the most important thing to go into these interviews with. So those are a little bit of like the tips from what I just had experience. But they did ask me questions, a lot of questions. I was actually surprised by the anatomy questions. They asked me what
Mm,
like a dilated CBD was, or what does an acute cirrhotic liver look like. Like those are things I do every day on the daily, but I don't think
mhm.
about it, you
Yes.
know?
Mhm.
So just be prepared for those kinds of questions. And then at the end of the day, they're looking to see your availability, right? That's the
Mhm.
whole reason why you're here. So be prepared to explain yourself, your life. Obviously, you don't have to be personal about it, but you have to let them know what you're willing to offer them. Are you looking for per diem, part time, full time? Are you planning on taking the call that they have? Because a lot of places have call shifts where you have to come
Mhm.
in the middle of the night or be an extra body when needed. And these are all things that we have to think about as sonographers, right? Being in the healthcare field, it's a whole different field and all different hours, 10s,
Mhm.
12s, 8s. These hospitals are 24/7. Can you give them a night shift, swing shift, day shift? And just be honest. I would rather someone be honest with me than someone tell me, hey, I can give you 5 days a week. And then when you get hired, you give them like 2 days. And that kind of
Yeah.
is not good. That's not a good look at all. So you guys don't do
Mhm.
that. But be honest though.
That's a very good advice.
Yeah.
Spoken from a true experienced interviewee
Oh
person.
man. I've been through so many interviews for ultrasound, and it's kind of interesting because, you know, people don't usually work at so many different places, but I've
Mhm.
probably worked at them all out here. A majority of them all, yes.
So they
So,
all know you.
most people do, and then the town is small, so I
Mhm.
know people at like every location, every ultrasound place. Um, besides the VA, that's the one place I don't know anyone at. So anyone over there in the VA, hit me up. I heard they have good benefits there,
Oh, yes,
and
because it's a government facility.
yeah, and those are things you should ask too when you go into an interview. Should ask them, what are the benefits? What's the PTO like? How many days off can I get if I have sick days or sick leave? Um do I get any incentives for certain things? Do I get extra pay for working nights, weekends? And these are all things that you don't really think about, but you should ask them because let's say you're applying to two different places and you have to decide between
Mhm.
the two. Well, if you didn't ask those questions, you wouldn't know how to decide between the two.
That's true.
And what if one is offering you something else and the other one's offering you no call? What if one's offering you more pay? What if one's offering you less pay? These are all things you also have to figure out as much as they want to figure out from you. And you can tell them like, "Oh, I've done carotid ultrasounds, venous ultrasounds, arterial, triple A's. I've done all these things." Then they'll be like, "Oh, that's good." And then they'll say, do you do TCDs?" And then if you don't, then what do you say or what do you do? Those are things that the conversations come across, and I like those kinds of interviews because
It's like a
you're
conversation.
yeah, you're
You're
just having
trying
conversation.
you're trying to get to know the one another. It's kinda like
Yeah.
dating, I think. Yeah, I
Unlike
kinda feel like
yeah.
yeah, it's kinda like dating.
Yeah.
Speed
Unlike
dating.
you just sitting there answering questions like a robot.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times people think that an interview should be like one sided, but it should not be like that. And they want to engage with you, and you should be engaging back with them. And
Mhm.
I think that if you are someone that does that versus someone who just doesn't talk and just sits there and just answers like, I love ultrasound. And then you're just like, yes, I scan abdomens. Like you should try to converse, and it makes the situation a little bit less nerve-wracking because you're having a conversation about what you do and what they do in the hospital, what you're going to expect and what they'll expect from you. It's kind of a mutual thing, I think, because why work
And
somewhere if you don't want to work there and you don't like what they're offering?
and it's also so that they can see how well you would function with or would vibe with their department or their team.
Mhm.
Because if you're gonna sit there, yes, I scan abdomen, yes, I love ultrasound, but can't carry, on the conversation,
Mhm.
they might not want to go for that person when the other candidate is very engaging and asking questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And always think about maybe like, you're not the only one interviewing. There's going to be multiple people interviewing. They will interview three, four, five people before they pick someone. And a lot of times these places don't hire three, four, five people. They will hire one person,
Hmm.
maybe two, but a lot of times they hire one at a time. Healthcare, oh, it's crazy. Once you get into it, you realize the money is going towards somewhere else. It's not going towards us. It's going towards somewhere else. And that's
Hmm.
just the honest truth. Healthcare is a business. And this is why you see out there um, people complaining about certain things and like patient load, patient things, all that stuff. But if you're going into a place where either one, you need experience, we've talked about this before. If you need the experience, you get the experience and then you go somewhere better, or two, you
Hmm.
you find somewhere, you get in there, you see how the dynamic is, and if you really don't like it, you work there for your, what is it, minimum 90 days maybe they may give you, and then you try to find something better. But this is just to help you guys realize that the interview is just the beginning to
Hmm.
you getting in there and then getting the experience, because we all need the experience, right? And to get
Yeah.
something bigger and better, you have to get somewhere and you have to get experience. So the interview is a first start. And you probably already had an interview at your DMS program, like our last episode. You can use those tips as well and bring that into getting a sonographer job interview. Some people have externship and internship and clinical interviews. I've had a lot of students who said they
Yes.
had those. Mhm.
That's really interesting
Yeah.
because I didn't have those interviews for clinicals. I was just placed.
Yeah, they just place you there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, a few of our people in the Discord, they had to go through interviews for their clinicals. So, you know, it's just a learning process. And I think the more interviews you go into, like, yeah, they don't get any easier, but you will get more comfortable with yourself and
Mm.
being confident in your answers. Because obviously, with us in the podcast, we were not this confident in the beginning. And now here
You're
we
not that confident.
are.
You mess
Here we
up all the
are,
time.
71
But we're just having
episodes
fun.
later. It's more comfortable
Yeah.
conversation. It flows. It's the same thing when you get experience, even when talking to your patients. Same
Yeah.
thing.
Practice.
Mm.
Practice makes it better.
Yeah. A tip would
Practice
be
is key.
practice with somebody, have someone like write some questions and prepare yourself before the interview, you know? Right? Look up on Google, what will they ask me in a ultrasound interview? There's probably lots of things on Google, and then
Hmm.
have someone interview you so that you know what you would like to say. It was funny though. My last interview, I literally was telling Sam, I was like, I literally didn't prepare for this. I just went into it because I have no time for anything right now.
Yeah. Sometimes, like when you do interviews a lot, it just like comes naturally. Like, yes,
Yeah.
you get the nerves because it's interviews, but once you're there, they start asking questions. You already know your answers. You already know what to say. It's
Yeah.
just because you've done it so much.
Right. To be honest, you have like since you have an interview coming up too, you have a better, like, because you talk to me on on here, and we always
Uh-huh.
like conversate. So I feel like you will have an easier time than if you didn't have the podcast, right? Because I ask you questions all the time and you're like sitting there thinking about it, and you still give me good answers. And I
Oh,
know,
really?
yeah, and I know that if they ask you questions, you'll be able to, respond in a way that I know you'll be fine. And
I
it is
have
nerve-wracking,
like
yeah.
I have like bullet points of the things that I focus on when I prepare for interviews. Like, tell me about yourself.
Mhm.
I have a guideline of what I would say and how I would um, wrap it up. And then my other thing is I would focus on the mission of like the company, which is like this applies to any other jobs because um, if some of you who follow my journey, this is my second career, so I've interviewed for other jobs outside of healthcare. So interviewing in healthcare is a kind of different for me. And it's like focus on the company, research the company, what's the mission, and how can I support that mission, and make sure that I mention it to the interviewer, like
Yeah.
the people who are interviewing me. So I do that too with interviews for sonography. It's like, how can I bring my skills that I've learned from my program to support the mission of this hospital, this facility,
Yeah.
and to the patients? Those are like the main things that I focus on.
Yeah.
And then for scanning interviews, well, we'll see because I've never done scanning interviews.
You'll be fine. Like, it just depends on what they ask you to scan, right? I've actually had, in our interviews, they will either make you scan an arm or an abdomen because those 2 are a bit difficult
Mhm.
exams. We're a general
I like
hospital.
arms.
I like arms too,
I like scanning arms. I think
but
arms is so much easier than legs.
they wanna see if you know how to label, if they know you know your anatomy, you know, how you
Yeah.
do it, how you take your pictures, things like that. Do you have high quality? Do you touch the machine? Do you play with the depth, the frequency? You know, there's some people I've sat in plenty of interviews, and some people don't even touch their machine or, like, adjust anything.
What do they do? They
They
just
just take the picture.
just like scan and take a picture, scan and take a picture.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
So this is this is what places are looking for. They're looking for quality. They're looking for people who know what they're doing, right? And obviously, if you're a new grad, they will be more lenient with you.
Mhm.
But if you have experience, let's say you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years experience, you are probably expected to know how to use the machine, even if it's a random machine you've never worked on before. You should ask them questions if you don't know where the button is on the machine.
Mhm.
I would be impressed by someone who asked me questions versus someone who just took pictures because they didn't know how the machine worked. So let's say you go into an interview, you don't know
Mhm.
how to use the machine. You ask them, I know how to use a GE, blah, 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 but this is a Philips. I just need a quick, figure out how this is. Or, oh, I'm looking for the depth. Can you show me where that is? I would rather someone ask me that in a scanning interview than someone just act like they know everything that they're
Mhm.
doing, but don't even touch the machine to make quality imaging, right? Because we
Yeah.
want quality images and quality patient care. So if you always have that quality in your mind, you will shine more than somebody else. And trust me, there are a lot of people out there who don't use the machine and the right way and how they should.
That's
So that's why
wild.
it is wild.
I
But
go crazy with like the depth, the focus, the PRS,
you're
the
like,
gain. I just want to make sure that everything is like picture perfect, you know?
no, yeah, some people, the gallbladder should be like, your target of interest should be right in the
Mhm.
middle, right?
Yes.
That's what you're taught in school.
Mhm.
But then there's some people who interview and their gallbladder like all the way up in the corner of the. I mean, this is nothing against them,
Mhm.
but you would think that the gallbladder would go into the middle of the. I mean, that's how you're supposed to take the image.
Yeah.
So that's what, like, essentially, if we're doing a scanning interview, we're trying to see your quality. your quality of image taking. And some people just don't have high quality. It's the truth. And I'm sure people will, s- see that throughout their course of working, right? You guys will have those people who will see other people's images and they're just like, "Hmm, that image can be better," right?
Yeah.
There's always a good image, but the image could probably be better. And typically, if you are able to take constructive criticism, that's also a good sign of someone who should work in your department, right?
Mhm.
Because we want to be better, and I want to work with someone who wants to strive to be better. And that's just coming from someone who works in a hospital where we care about quality and we care about, what type of images we're bringing to the table. Honestly, there are patients that are very hard and there are patients who are difficult. So you're not going to always have beautiful imaging, but you're in a scanning interview. You want your image to be as perfect as you can. Even if the patient they give you, or quote unquote patient, is a larger fluffy patient or is a really skinny patient, and because those exams are hard too in itself,
Mhm.
um you still want to make it so that you have the highest quality imaging for that scanning interview, and those are honestly fun. I like doing the scanning interviews because it's a challenge, and that's why we're in this field.
How many have you done? I'm just curious.
Scanning interviews, I've done 3. Mhm.
3.
Yeah.
That sounds I would wanna be interviewed by you.
Oh,
After
well,
you saying this, I wanna be
me
interviewed by you.
giving scanning interviews
Uh-huh.
myself, I've actually done myself 3, but sitting in interviews, I've sat in a lot of it scanning interviews.
No, I'm asking, how many have you
Have
done?
I done? Okay, yeah,
But
3.
over, like, throughout listening to you in this episode, I was like, "I wanna be scanned by you," just because it sounds so much fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I love it, and, like, as you guys know, like, in my when we talk all the time, I'm like, I love talking to my
Yeah.
patients. So I
Mhm.
have no issue scanning, paying attention to the scan, and talking to my
Mhm.
patient at the same time because I have developed that in my experience and my skills. I know how to calm a patient down if they're having anxiety, if they're worried, if they're freaking out. And if I can't, then it's like, you just can't. And then you come back if you really had to, or you let the nurse know and you're like, I'm sorry, can't do this. Because you
Mhm.
can only do so much as a sonographer.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we just want people in this field that care about the patient and care about high quality care. That means you give high quality imaging. And that's all we talk about here at
Yeah.
Ultrasound. So hopefully this episode's helpful for you guys. And
Yes.
I don't know, did you learn something today for your future interviews?
Oh, yes, I have. In case, those who are wondering how I have a job without having a interview,
You're like,
um,
what?
without ever having an interview at the moment, clinicals was my interview, so I was, hired basically before I finished my program from my clinical site. So
Yeah.
I didn't even need to go in for an interview.
And I'll tell you, that's probably 80% of people. I mean, that's a random number I'm coming up with. Y'all don't quote me. Don't look it up. But a lot of people that I know get their jobs straight out of clinicals because your clinical is a whole, what, 6 months, 1 year of
Mhm.
interview. They're watching
It's a
you.
working interview.
Yeah. They're watching you, how you're doing, how you're learning, how you're taking constructive criticism. And I would like just knowing Lynn, I don't know how she scans. I would still hire her because I know how she is, you know?
Aw,
And
thank you.
and if I see your scanning, I'm sure your scanning skills are top tier. Boom, you have it in the bag. So it's things like that that we want to see in this world of ultrasound. And honestly, if you're a sonographer, if you're a student, like this should make you excited and like want to
Mhm.
strive to be better and do better. Because as much as I'm burnt out, like I still want to be the best, right?
Yeah.
And we want to do the best for our patients. So,
Yeah, I'm like, as like how tired I am,
oh yeah, we're tired, man.
every single day, but every time I I'm about to like scan a patient, like every image I strive to have the best quality. Unless I'm like, I looked at, I did a sweep and I'm like, okay, this is difficult. As long as it's
Right.
diagnostic, I'm okay.
What matters is you tried, right?
Hmm.
And that's how you get quicker at it, because in the beginning you're slow because you want to get the best. You
Yeah.
want to, but then you learn over time you can't get the best every time. And that's okay. And we want someone that understands we want the best. We strive for the best. We're trying to get the best. But at the end of the day, you can only get what you can get. And as long
Yes.
as you tried your best, that's what matters. So take all of this information into your interviews and just show them that you really care about quality and your quality care, because that's what we are as healthcare workers. We're taking care of our patients. Yeah.
Exactly. Very well
Yeah.
said.
You
Hopefully,
guys,
this episode has been really helpful, really informative. Hopefully, I know
hopefully.
Giselle was taking the lead on this episode here because she has more experience in sonography job interviews than I have, and I have learned from her. But hopefully, you
Yeah.
guys check this episode out, and if you haven't already, check the previous episode for program interviews.
Yes. And if you guys really, really need to, I have 2 videos on my YouTube channel that really talk about this too, individually,
If
both
if you
program and job.
If you Google it, it should pop up because I just Googled and it did pop up. How
That's
to ace
crazy.
your sonography job interview.
Yeah. You guys will be fine. Like, you guys are listening to this podcast. I already give you props. I always say
Yes.
that. Like, if you're listening to us,
Yeah.
wow.
You're
Just
doing
wow.
more than I have.
Me too. Gosh. And I listen to these back. I'm like, wow, I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much. But we appreciate you guys, and
Yes.
we'll
Thank
talk
you
to you
so
guys
much.
soon.
Next time.
Bye.
Thank you for connecting through sounds with us. We appreciate you and can't wait to connect with you again next time.